Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The RBI bars Kotak Mahindra Bank from onboarding new customers through its digital platforms. Also bars the bank from issuing new credit cards. RBI says the action follows, and I quote, continued failure to address concerns over the bank's IT systems. Hindustan Unilever meets muted estimates in Q4 even as revenue and profits decline. The management says urban India continues to lead with growth. The company is starting to see gradual recovery in rural areas. Axis Bank beats estimates on all parameters in Q4. Profits up nearly 30%, revenue up 17%, margins expand by 160 basis points, asset quality improves. Tesla reports the biggest revenue decline in 12 years. Elon Musk says the recent job cuts were a necessity, adds the company wants to fully utilize its current capacity of close to 3 million units before investing in new manufacturing lines. This casts a degree of doubt on the proposed investments in India and Mexico. US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti bats for closer partnership on green energy, not just for domestic markets but also for exports to the Indo-Pacific. Adds the US will continue to raise concerns with India. When asked about India summoning a diplomat after comments on Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's arrest, Garcetti says he is in awe of India's democratic process and satisfied by the progress made in the case probing the attempted assassination of Sikh separatists in New York. The Supreme Court reserves the judgment on a batch of petitions seeking 100% cross-verification of the vote count with the paper audit trail. The EC tells the Supreme Court the VVPATs cannot be reprogrammed. Petitioners cite an RTI reply from the EC and EVM manufacturers claiming that the flash memory can be reprogrammed. Prime Minister Modi claims the Congress party wants to impose inheritance tax, cites a video of Sam Pitroda where he refers to the tax in the US and calls for a debate. Pitroda says his statements have been twisted. The Congress says inheritance tax is not part of its manifesto, accuses the Prime Minister of diverting attention, pulls up a video of former MOS finance giant Sinha proposing the inheritance tax. Israel issues evacuation orders for thousands of civilians in northern Gaza. The UN calls for an independent probe after 300 dead bodies were found in a mass grave inside a Gaza hospital. More than 34,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war so far. After months of delays and setbacks, the US Senate approves $95 billion in aid for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. $61 billion will go to Ukraine. Israel gets $26 billion. Taiwan gets over $8 billion. Malt-based powders like Bonvita and Complan can no longer be sold on e-commerce websites as health drinks. Will it impact sales? What do nutritionists make of the move? A special report coming up. As always, let's start with the day's market action. The sensex and the nifty ending in the green for the fourth straight session, but the gains were limited in trade today. So we saw the sensex gaining about 114 points, the nifty closing flat, 34 points higher. And that was the story largely for our markets, was 400 points higher on the mid-cap. The Nifty Metal Index up by about 2.5% today. So that was the picture as far as the markets were concerned. But the big story this evening, the Reserve Bank has barred Kotak Mahindra Bank from onboarding new customers through its online and mobile banking channels and has issued also a diktat that no fresh credit cards will be issued. The action comes after the central bank cited concerns over the private lenders' compliance and risk management practices. Ritu joins us now with the details. Ritu, what does this mean for Kotak Mahindra Bank? And more importantly, take us through the details of the Reserve Bank's order and why it has acted in this fashion.
Well, tough action on Kotak Mahindra Bank, and one that is reminiscent of what happened in the case of HDFC Bank earlier. Now, RBI has directed Kotak Mahindra Bank to stop onboarding any new customers through its online and mobile banking channels, and also to stop issuing fresh credit cards. Existing customers, of course, don't get impacted, but the bank cannot add new customers digitally. RBI said these actions were necessitated based on some significant concerns that arose out of the IT examination of the bank for the years 2022 and 2023 and the continued failure on the part of Kotak Bank to address these concerns. There were serious deficiencies and non-compliances that RBI found in IT inventory management, user access management, vendor risk management, data security, business continuity and so on. And the compliances that were submitted by Kotak Mahindra Bank were also found to be either inadequate, incorrect or not sustained. Now, because of these IT issues, Kotak Bank's online and digital banking channels suffered frequent frequent, significant outages in the last 2 years, the recent one being the service disruption on the 15th of April itself, resulting in serious customer inconveniences. The other concern that RBI has highlighted is the rapid growth in the volume of the bank's digital transactions of late, and that includes transactions pertaining to credit cards that was further putting a load on the IT systems. RBI said it has been engaged in continuous high-level dialogues with the bank on all of these concerns for at least the last 2 years, but the outcomes, RBI said, has been far from satisfactory, leading to this action. However, the restrictions will be reviewed after an external audit and the remediation of these deficiencies to the satisfaction of Reserve Bank. Now remember, Kotak has a new CEO, Ashok Vaswani, barely a few months into the job, and this is going to be trial by fire for him. Digital has been a big focus area of the bank, credit card, a high margin business. So if these restrictions stay on for too long, it could hurt the bank. If you recall, HDFC Bank was also placed under similar restrictions because of similar IT issues just a few months into Shashidhar Jagdishan taking over as the CEO. In their case, it took nearly 15 months for all of the restrictions to be lifted. For Kotak Mahindra Bank, we'll have to see.
RBI acting in the interests of bank customers and RBI acting in the interests of customers at large. They will have to conduct first a thorough root cause analysis of exactly what the RBI has been telling them in its inspection reports for the last 2 years. And then it has to do a system audit, and then it has to produce a report, which would satisfy the RBI that yes, they have addressed the issues with their systems.
So Kotak Mahindra Bank, they're facing action from the Reserve Bank of India for non-compliance as far as its IT systems are concerned. The Reserve Bank will now seek remedial measures and then get an external auditor to validate them before moving further. In Earnings Corner, a stellar quarter for Axis Bank. The private lender has beaten street estimates on all fronts. Abhishek is standing by now with the details. Take us through the fine print of Axis Bank's numbers, Abhishek, ahead of estimates.
It's an absolutely beautiful quarter for Axis Bank. They have beaten our poll with respect to the top line growth and the bottom line growth as well. Bottom line largely aided by the other income as well. So to talk for top line growth, they have grown deposits by 6.3%, and still the interest expense is up just 4.5%. So they have been able to control their cost of funds this time around. We saw with HDFC Bank as well. So we'll need to watch out for the CASA, because that is the flip that is giving control over cost of funds for lenders. And if you take a look at the advances growth, they are at just 3.5% sequential growth. We are working with a number of 4%, but look at the interest income, that's up 4.5%, which means that they have been able to command on the yield as well. So the net interest margin might have been better than what the street is anticipating, because our poll suggested 12,800 crore of NII, but it has come in at 13,088 crores. So there is a jump that they have seen in their NII as well. Other income, that's increased by 38% on a YY basis and 21.8% sequentially. Provisions have come under control. Asset quality, now that's the best that you are seeing in last 34 to 36 quarters with respect to gross NPA ratio or net NPA ratio. Gross NPA ratio has improved to 1.43%, down about 15 basis points sequentially, and net NPA is down to 0.31%, which is down 5 basis points sequentially. So it's a thumbs up with respect to asset quality, business momentum, and the PNL being very strong. Back to you.
Abhishek, many thanks for joining us. And more earnings. Hindustan Unilever's Q4 earnings in line with muted street estimates. The HUL management said that urban India continues to lead with growth, and it has started to see gradual recovery in rural pockets sequentially. Let's listen in.
The way we see on rural, we had spoken about that rural usually is always accretive to FMCG demand. And we had seen that was an area of overall business which had seen in macroeconomics, given the amount of cumulative inflation and the demand outlook, we've seen a purge of disposable income, and hence we've seen rural demand coming off. That we've started to see gradual recovery as we had expected. Is it playing the role of being accretive to FMCG? Answer is no. But is it improving sequentially? Answer is yes.
So Hindustan Unilever reported its fourth quarter numbers, and those numbers were in line with street expectations. That's not much to say because the street expectations were pretty low from the company as well, and that's largely because the macro environment hasn't changed much. So just to run you through the numbers, the company reported a revenue of close to around 14,857 crores. This compares with the CNBC TV18 poll of 14,850 crores. The EBITDA as well was largely in line at around 34-35 crores, pretty much as what the street was expecting, and as a result of which the net profit also a little over 2,400 crores, in line with expectations of around 2,440 crores itself. Now what's interesting is that the company's gross margins increased by over 300 basis points, but the EBITDA margins declined, and that's largely because of two factors. One, because the company increased their ad spends by about 200 basis points. Secondly, the deal with GSK on OTC that expired took away about 60 basis points of their EBITDA margins. And thirdly, the increase in royalty payments to the parent Unilever PLC also eroded some of the margins. In terms of segments, the company operates in home care, personal care, as well as food and refreshments. There wasn't much to write home about in terms of revenues for either home care or personal care, which actually saw a decline. But food saw a growth of about 4%, and that was largely price-led because of the inflation that we're seeing in coffee prices. The only glimmer of hope now one has is that with forecast of normal monsoon, the management sees some confidence in consumer sentiment returning, and hopefully going forward they do volumes of about 4%, which the company has done in the past as well. So those are a couple of factors that we'll be watching out for going forward.
Well, that's Mangalam summing up the HUL numbers for us. And the HUL CEO also reacted to the controversy over sugar content in popular drinks Horlicks. Rohit Java said that added sugar in Horlicks is the least among industry peers and is within the limits allowed by the food safety regulator, the FSSAI. Take a look.
We know that large part of even the more urban population is deficient in macronutrients. So the category has a clear role in the life of the Indian consumer. In any serving of Horlicks, far less than a teaspoonful of sugar, added sugar. There's of course sugar that comes with the preparation itself, but the added sugar is amongst the least in the industry. So I don't think this is of material significance to us. And also the recent discussion is more to do with infant category, which we don't participate in.
Well, that's HUL's Rohit Java. In global earnings, electric vehicle company Tesla has witnessed the biggest revenue decline in more than a decade in its first quarter, dropping 9% on an annual basis. This was largely driven by a decline in vehicle deliveries and price cuts undertaken by the company. However, Elon Musk told analysts that the recent job cuts were a necessity. He also added that the company wants to fully utilize its current capacity of close to 3 million units before investing in new manufacturing lines. Now, this casts a degree of doubt on the EV giant's proposed investments in India and Mexico. Take a look.
Giving up anything that it's significant that I'm aware of. So we've had a long period of prosperity from 2019 to now, and so if a company sort of organizationally is 5% wrong per year, that accumulates to 25-30% of inefficiency. We've made some corrections along the way, but it is time to reorganize the company for the next phase of growth.
Elon Musk on the conference call. On to a CNBC TV18 exclusive. IndiGo's Rahul Bhatia bullish on demand for travel and aviation in India. Speaking to me, Bhatia said the travel and hospitality industries India is currently in a new growth trajectory. He also added that India has an enormous opportunity for growth and there's plenty of headroom from where we are.
Travel and hospitality industries are on a completely new trajectory. And, some of the pundits had said, maybe the post-COVID sheen will come off at a certain moment in time. We don't see that. We probably have a slightly differentiated view on India, given that, we start on a very small base. I think we are, from that point of view, favorably positioned to just embrace everything that's going to come in this country over the next 15 or 20 years. We're going to make the classical comparison between China and India. You look at the number of hotel assets in China versus India. You look at the number of aircrafts flying in China versus India, that we have an enormous opportunity. Probably the last bastion of what I would call enormous growth in aviation and hospitality globally.
That's IndiGo's Rahul Bhatia. US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, has batted for closer partnership on green energy, not just for domestic markets, but also for exports to the Indo-Pacific. Speaking exclusively to my colleague Parikshit Luthra, Garcetti also said that the US will continue to raise concerns with India When asked about India summoning a diplomat after comments on Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's arrest, Garcetti said that he is in awe of India's democratic process and is satisfied by the progress that's been made in the case that's probing the attempted assassination of a Sikh separatist in New York. Take a look.
From guaranteeing some of those bus purchases to looking also at things like charging infrastructure and three-wheelers and ways that maybe one day we can see exports from India. If we can see, and I've been on one of those electric buses made right here in India, the quality is great. We're seeing in America oftentimes we only have options to buy from one country in the world. We want to see India do well for India, but also be part of the green supply chain for the United States and for the world.
Are you talking to India about having a supply chain, having a mechanism in place where these components can be available to countries in the Indo-Pacific?
Every day we're talking to our friends here in India about how we can partner together and with our common friends, partners and allies. This is not about being anti-anyone. It's about making sure everybody writes that future together, and India will play a critical, if not the critical role, I think, in that future that we're looking at.
Now, we've seen a lot of criminal action against certain opposition leaders. This was a cause for concern. Was the summoning of the U.S. Deputy Chief of Mission unprecedented? And have U.S. concerns been addressed?
Here in India, I'm always inspired by people who hike up, for 2 days to a remote village or find one person living on top of a mountain to make sure that he can vote. But we will always raise, concerns that we have, but we're, I think, in awe of the entire democratic process as it happens. And we know that this is for Indians to decide. That's what a democracy is, not necessarily for others to come in and say, but for those who are the polity to have a moment where they get to decide who is going to, for the next 5 years, be their government.
Right. The probe into the attempted assassination of a Sikh activist, how satisfied are you with developments on the investigation so far?
So far, the Indian government has met the thresholds that we have put forward and that we have collaborated together with them on what was a very serious matter. Obviously, there's a criminal case going on, so I'd refer specific questions to our Department of Justice. But I think for any country, we look to a friend and a partner to say, if there is accusations or evidence of something, we expect it to be taken seriously, not just by us, but also by India. So far, the government of India has done just that, and we are satisfied with the progress thus far.
That is the U.S. Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti. Patanjali Ayurved Baba Ramdev and Acharya Balakrishna issued a new public apology in connection with the misleading ads case. This comes a day after the Supreme Court asked them how prominently they had published their unqualified apology and wanted to know if it was as big as the front page ads for their herbal medicines. The ads published earlier had a smaller font size and did not carry any clear references to either Baba Ramdev or Balakrishna. A petition has been filed in the Supreme Court seeking an investigation into an alleged electoral bond scam. The plea has sought a court-monitored special investigation team to probe into the incidents of quid pro quo agreements between political parties and their respective donors. They argue that these arrangements are in violation of the Prevention of Corruption Act and have suggested that companies expected favours in return for the purchase of electoral bonds. Now, the Supreme Court has reserved its judgment on a batch of petitions seeking 100% cross-verification of the vote count with the paper audit trail. The Election Commission informing the Supreme Court that VVPATs cannot be reprogrammed, but petitioners disputing that claim. Ashmit is standing by now with the details. Ashmit, take us to what transpired and when we can expect an order on this front.
Well, the EVM VVPAT matter was listed before the top court. It was listed for directions which gave the impression that perhaps an order or a judgment could be expected. But when the bench did assemble, they clarified that the judgment is not nearly ready, but that they had some very pointed specific questions for the Election Commission. First up, amongst the key questions that they asked were regarding the memory function of the EVM as well as the VVPAT machine. The one pointed question that was asked is that as far as the microcontrollers are concerned, if they're available on both the EVM and the VVPAT, and if they are programmable only a single time or if they can be reprogrammed once again, raising the doubt whether or not there is any hacking possible. The second key question that was asked by the Apex Court was that whether or not the storage that is done post the election is done for a period which allows for complaints to be raised. Now, these questions were answered by the Apex Court. As far as storage of these EVMs and VVPATs are concerned, the Election Commission clarified that as per the Representation of People's Act, they are stored for a period of 45 days in case a complaint is made so that the EVM is is available for verification. That's one. Second, on the issue of memory here, the Election Commission clarified before the top court that the microcontrollers that are introduced both as a part of the EVMs as well as the VVPAT can be programmed only once and cannot be reprogrammed. However, there were doubts cast on these assertions made by the Election Commission by the petitioners. The petitioners said that their understanding is that these microcontrollers do have flash memories which indeed can be reprogrammed. So on the back of all of these concerns, the Apex Court has reserved its judgment. Interestingly, no clarity given whether this judgment will come before or after the elections are done.
Ashwit Penny, thanks. Up next on India Business Hour, malt-based powders like Bonvita and Complan can no longer be sold on e-commerce website as health drinks. Will this impact sales? What do nutritionists make of the move? A special report coming up. Catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Prime Minister Modi launched a fresh attack on the Congress party, finding ammunition in statements made by Sam Pitroda, the head of the Indian Overseas Congress. In an interview to news agency ANI, Pitroda cited the inheritance tax laws in the US and called for a debate on the issue. Here's what he had to say.
We have to make sure that few people become so rich that they begin to run government. We have to make sure that's the requirement in democracy, everywhere in the world. Nothing wrong in being rich. Nothing wrong in accumulating wealth, but to what point? Let me tell you, in America, there is an inheritance tax. So if, let's say, one has $100 million worth of wealth, and when he dies, he can only transfer probably 45% to his children. 55% is grabbed by government. Now, that's an interesting law.
While Pitroda did not make any reference to the Congress party, the BJP alleges that the Congress wants to impose an inheritance tax if it comes to power. The Congress party has rejected the charge. In fact, Pitroda in a tweet said that he had cited inheritance taxes in the US as an example. He has said it has nothing to do with the policy of any party, including the Congress. Speaking at a rally in Chhattisgarh, Prime Minister Modi attacked the Congress party, citing Pitroda's remarks.
अब कांग्रेस का कहना है कि वो इनहेरिटेंस टैक्स लगाएगी। आप जो अपनी मेहनत से संपत्ति जुटाते हैं, वो आपके बच्चों को नहीं मिलेगी, बल्कि कांग्रेस सरकार का पंजा उसे भी आपसे छीन लेगा। कांग्रेस का मंत्र है, कांग्रेस की लूट जिंदगी के साथ भी और जिंदगी के बाद भी।
Congress leader Jairam Ramesh hitting back at the Prime Minister and the BJP over the inheritance tax issue. Ramesh said the BJP leader Jayant Sinha had publicly called for the introduction of the inheritance tax when he was the Minister of State for Finance in 2014. Ramesh also claimed that the late Arun Jaitley, when he was the Finance Minister in 2018, had praised the inheritance tax for spurring large endowments to hospitals and universities in the West. Election campaigning for Phase 2 of the Lok Sabha polls has come to an end. Voting will take place in 89 constituencies across 13 states and union territories on Friday. This includes all 20 seats in Kerala, which is set to witness a three-way contest among the Congress, the BJP and the Left. The Congress and the Left parties are part of the India Alliance at the national level, but are contesting against one another in Kerala. Voting will also take place for 13 Lok Sabha seats in Rajasthan, 14 in Karnataka. This includes Bengaluru. Moving away from the elections, malt-based powders like Bonvita and Complan can no longer be sold on e-commerce websites as health drinks. Now, this government order came earlier this month and comes nearly a year after complaints about high sugar content in Bonvita came up. CNBC TV 18's Kiran Khatri reports that while the order has caused a fair amount of consternation for industry, experts are not certain that it will last or impact sales. Take a look.
Bonvita, Horlicks,
Complan,
Boost.
Popular cereal or malt-based drinks like these are household names. But they have now lost their health drink tag, with the government directing e-commerce sites to remove them from the category. Food safety regulator FSSAI says it doesn't have any definition for the term. For a segment that's valued anywhere between $1.2 and $1.5 billion in India, this could cause some hiccups. Experts say around 15 to 20% of the product portfolio of these brands may be dependent on e-commerce. In the long term, however, they don't see this affecting sales.
Consumers may be looking at certain these products in some category, and they may be and they may not find it, and they may think that the product is not available. So there will be minor sort of disruptions here and there, which will be operational in nature. Nothing which is fundamental or something very high risk. Now, as far as long term is concerned, we have seen enough of such controversies to emerge in the past, and after a point in time, we have seen those sales of such products to come back.
One big reason is brand recall. Brands like Horlicks, Bournvita and Complan have been in India since the 1950s and have ingrained themselves in consumer psyches. Horlicks and Boost command a 50% market share. Bournvita's market share is 13 to 15%, and products like Complan, Pediasure, Ensure, Milo and Protein X account for the rest. While the products have positioned themselves as providers of essential micronutrients to children, for many consumers, the preference is about taste.
As a child, I think I would have focused more upon the taste, and my mother would have focused on the nutrients.
As a boy who used to play and stuff, so it was like, wow, I'll get a lot of stamina and yeah, I should drink it.
Normal milk did not suit me. I did not like it, the flavor, so chocolatey was nice.
हम कहते हैं ये पीने से बहुत एनर्जी आ जाएगी, आप रेस में फर्स्ट आ जाओगे, जैसे ऐड देखते थे बोलते थे उन्हें.
Nutritionists welcome the government's order. They say these products should not be consumed regularly given their high sugar content. For instance, a 20-gram serving of Bournvita contains about 6.4 grams of added sugar, while that of Complan has 5 grams and Pediasure has 4.5 grams. The added sugar content in Horlicks and Boost is lower.
There are many companies who use various terms and terminologies for a market, a product. They do not mention what are the trials, what are the studies, what are the outcomes of that particular product after they are consumed. I think it's a very good move by the government, which says that you should know what you are drinking. Not necessarily it could be healthy.
However, advertising watchdog ASCI says accusations of misleading ads against these beverage powders have been few and far between, and almost none of them have been about nutrition.
In the past year, we have received overall for food and beverages almost 800 complaints. Now, out of these, for the malt products, the number of complaints was 7. So about 5 of them had to change what they were saying in the ads. 2 were found to be okay.
But the recent FSSAI action could have one effect.
Experts say that with an increasingly health-conscious consumer, brands like these seriously need to evaluate their portfolio, rework formulae, and launch products that are healthier. In Noida, this is Kiran Khatri.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here, thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. We're back in a moment.